what were the key design attributes of the V-Bowls that made it what it was? And then how did you tweak those, you know, going from the V-Bowls to the thick Lizzy to the FM? Because you're going from, you know, pure trim speed to more performance. Like what were the things that you tweaked?
I wonder if I had like a little sketch pad sitting around me somewhere here. This is when I started drawing in the dust on my walls. Oh, perfect. So if you take a displacement hole, you've got a kind of low rocker that flows flat. I hope this translates. And then your deck is an S deck, so it has this hump in it. Can you see that at all?
I can kind of see
really.
it. It's the low quality is the issue. But maybe, you know, let's just talk.
Okay, I'll try and I'll do my best here. It's like if you focus all of the volume in your board in one place, so that is make the wide point in a spot and the thickest part of the board that same spot and the deepest part of the bend in that rocker that same spot. You focused all of your volume into one area of the board. What that happens, depending on how you foil the board around that spot, is make it more or less sensitive and tippy and rolly from that space. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah, totally.
So the V-Bowls taught me about that part of the board. This has most to do with midlengths, because in shortboards, you're not really working with this concept as much because you're going to make a really twitchy board really fast. It's not going to work for most people.
And quick question, I mean, just to clarify for everybody that's listening as well. So when you're talking about a hull, you're talking about the bottom of the board has some belly as opposed to a concave like on your normal shortboard, right?
Yeah, you've got how to break that down. So a displacement hull would have a convex, like round bottom, wide point forward, thin, like bladed pointy rails to various degrees. And then the rail line, the apex of the farthest point out on the rail, goes in the tail low to high in the nose. So your rail is going to go like this in the nose and then slowly turn down in the tail. So you've got a few things working at the same time. And those are kind of like the basic tenements of a displacement hull. So doing all of those things puts your volume into one spot. The V-Bowls, what that was basically taking that spot, which is classically forward of the wide point, and taking it behind center and making it wide point back. So all of a sudden you have all that sensation, all that rolling and all that control behind center. That was not like, I'm not trying to say, because there's, I guarantee some people that'll roll their eyes. I'm not trying to say I was the first person to ever do that at all. That is not what's going on here. But in terms of foiling it out like a displacement hole, playing with that outline and understanding the rocker, it's a really unique thing. You could look at a photo of a couple boards and be like, oh, that looks similar to this. The foil is what differentiates a V-Bowls. So what the difference is how you take that thick part and then foil the board out and then work all the curves off of that point. So in terms of making different versions of the V-Bowls, like you're asking, it's basically about centering that point and putting it where you want it, and then working all of the details around that area. So if I leave the board a little bit more doughy, carry the volume a little more forward, and the rails a little more full, it's going to be a lot more forgiving. It's going to be better for somebody that's heavier or a beginner that's coming off longboards, rode a V-Bowls and he wants one, versus if the thing is really thick in the middle and then super thin on the rails and nose and tail and everything's really pointy and bladed out, that's going to be better for somebody that has experience on these boards and that really wants to take it up a notch and get like the craziest V-Bowls sensation ever. And all of that comes out in conversation when I'm kind of dialing in the board with somebody. But I'm basically just refining every edge and tip of the board around that point, depending on the feeling somebody wants. And check this out. How's my sweat? I've been watching this. In there? Oh God, I'm gonna give it like just over 100 degrees in here. I've been watching these little dots like grow, as we keep talking. And I was like, oh, it's going to get to a point where this is just drenched.
Yo,
So
just
get
take the shirt
excited.
off, man. Just let us see the chest.
Anyone that's watching, you can just track my fucking body temperature here. It's like, it's starting up here too. Oh, all right.
Man, wet t-shirt contest going on over there, man. Looking pretty sexy. That's all I gotta say.
I got the wrong color. Yeah. I'm trying to hide.
I want to see the nips, man. All right. Well, so, oh man. So the way I think you described it earlier, which I think is a great way of describing the way the V-Bolts felt, is that you describe it's like when you're at that center point and you're all the way back, which is the weird thing, is that you get this ball bearing effect. Like it's super sensitive to anything you do, and that's kind of like that ball bearing effect is part of the fun of it, right? And I'm sure that's that thing that you were trying to unlock that felt different from your old school eggs, which would just kind of more, not be as sensitive, and you'd feel like, it just feels like a heavier kind of this leaden feeling as opposed to this really fast accelerating kind of ball bearing feeling.
Or even just neutral, when a neutral board is a good board for a lot of people. And some of us, me included, want a board that's got a serious fucking opinion about itself. I want to have to figure out what the board wants to a certain degree. There's boards I want that more from and boards that I don't. But I should say also that all of this V-Bolts discussion should probably boil down into that central feeling that you and I are explaining is what I'm trickling into all of my boards in some degree, depending on what board it is and who wants what and how we're dealing with it. So we're talking all about V-Bolts, but to me in my brain, I'm just talking about the core of all of my shaping, which is that feeling.
Right.
The FM has it, the thick Lizzy has it, depending on what someone wants out of it. Even Williams boards have a degree of it. So to me, that core feeling is what I think defines somebody as a shaper. Is if you could step on somebody's board without knowing what it is and be like, oh, this is that guy's stuff. That's, I think, really, really sacred in design. That's that central, that rolling, arcing, carving, ball bearing thing is what I hope that is for me when somebody steps on a board. And whenever someone does say that, like, oh yeah, I rode this board and I knew immediately it was one of yours. That's one of the best compliments. So that all of this V-Bolts discussion to me boils down to that feeling is the thing I'm working with and working for.
Yeah.